This is some dialogue back and forth, some text dialogue between a gentleman and his girlfriend, and they get in a little bit of a spat over what she's doing with her time with her kid. And the father of her kid, we'll just put it that way. The young miss goes, "I want to let you know that I'm meeting with my kid, and the kid and her dad after work for dinner, and a film will be done around 9 or 10. I just wanted to let you know before I accepted the invite. I hope that doesn't bother you." Now, first things first here, she's not asking for his permission. She's not asking for his forgiveness or anything. She's just basically telling him, "I'm gonna go hang out with my kid and her dad, and we're gonna go watch a movie and have dinner together." And then she says, "I hope that doesn't bother you." So he responds with, "My girlfriend is hanging out at her apartment with an ex-boyfriend and her daughter while I'm at work now." He's not wrong, but let's just continue. "Actually, I would be going to his house, and yes, that is what is happening. But I have had this tradition with him for years and kept it since I moved out before you and I met." So she says, "I'm trying to understand what's this about. What bothers you about this?" And he says, "It's a respect issue. I feel it feels disrespectful when my girlfriend goes to her ex-boyfriend's house to hang out with him and his daughter while I'm at work. If you're still doing that after you've broken up, then your relationship is not over. I'm not a cuckold." A cuckold is somebody that essentially raises the child of another man, or there's any number of definitions. It's always disparaging. Basically, he likes to watch another man be intimate with his wife or girlfriend. He raises the child of man. There's a whole bunch of different ways that it's been defined, but that's essentially what it is. It's not flattering. And then he says, "If I'm on the wrong, please tell me how." She says, "I can't answer you right now because I'm about to log into a meeting. Let's talk later." And that's typically how things like that go. The context to that, I thought, was it's funny and interesting at the same time. But at the end of the day, if you're gonna deal with a single mom, you're gonna deal with shit like this. You can't avoid it. You invite a woman into your life that has a child or children in tow from a different marriage or a relationship or a boyfriend or something like that. You're gonna end up in a situation like, sooner or later. Okay, so guys, in this case, it just sounds like it's one kid. I've come across a number of different gentlemen that I've dealt with on a one-on-one coaching basis, and sometimes it's multiple kids from multiple different fathers. You want to talk about inviting complexity and complicating your life unnecessarily. Go date a chick that's got a bunch of kids from a bunch of different men, and see how easy, lucrative, and fun your life ends up being. An environment like that, it just doesn't. It ends up being a freaking nightmare. Is this gentleman wrong? Not really. Would you want your girlfriend or wife hanging out with an ex having dinner in a movie? I understand that there's an anchor here, which is the kid, the common sort of denominator between these two people. But gentlemen like this are forever going to struggle with this dynamic. Women hate it when gentlemen have children from a prior relationship, and they don't. Gentlemen generally are more accepting, if we can put it that way, of women's past and her choices. The difference generally between men and women is when it comes to men, generally speaking, they have a lot less custody than women. I think women get something like 80% of the custody orders still, and something like 43 or 44% of children today are raised by single mother. Generally speaking, if you're a man or a woman and you're dating, if you're a dude dating a woman with kids, she's got her kids pretty much all the time. A lot of these dudes, even if they have children of their, they often end up in a scenario where they spend more time raising some other dude's kids than they do raising their own kids. Right now, the reference that he made to cuckold, it's pretty much spot on because she's basically ditching him by spending time with this gentleman. Some may disagree, others may argue it. Whatever the point of this, that I'm really trying to make here is it doesn't matter how you try to slice and dice. They say there's all these different ways to skin a cat and deal with it. You want an easy, lucrative, and fun. Don't date single women, period. Stay away from them. If you want to get into an FOB type of scenario, Friends with benefits, fine. But as soon as she starts giving you the, hey, my kids have been looking over my shoulder and wondering who I've been texting, and I think it'd be cool if you came over sometime and you met them sort of thing and took us all out to Chuck E. Cheese. That's when you're like, nope, next I'm good. That is the extent that you should. That is a boundary, that is a barrier, gentlemen, that you should put around yourself and your life, especially if you're a single gentleman with no kids. Mostly single gentlemen with no kids dealing with women that have kids. Dudes are so forgiving, way too forgiving, in taking on the burden of essentially what is the performance of playing the role of a parent, and they end up having no authority as a parent, but 100% responsibility as a parent to a kid that they didn't even father, doesn't have their DNA, sure as hell doesn't have their last name. There's no benefit to it. Absolutely none whatsoever. It's all downside and risk. And speaking of risk, to give you an example, I can't count the number of gentlemen that I've had conversations with that were dating single mommies that put themselves in an environment, or essentially a position where, because they were with them for a certain period of time and where they lived in their state or province, the government, the stateless, just call it, viewed it as a marriage, because after you lived together for a certain period of time, as someone was common law, you can be on the hook. And several of gentlemen have been on the hook for child support, for a kid that you did not father, that does not have your last, and doesn't have your DNA because you play the role of daddy long enough. So in the eyes of the state, in the eyes of the government, that's sufficient for them to basically say, Bill, even though they didn't come out of your balls and you didn't father them, you still spent 2.5 years living together, acting as a father, and you're now on the hook for child support for, until they're adults basically. So again, you gentlemen can post these things and say, dialogue here and there, and here's a field report, and how would you deal with this? Be that gentleman. Level yourself up so that you're in the top 1%, 5%, whatever that happens to be, but be that gentleman where you get into the top percentile sort of thing. And then you don't have to deal with any of this nonsense. You can just move past. And I don't mind doing limited, like friends with benefit sort of arrangement. But I don't want to meet Billy and Bobby and Sally or any, forget it. Don't invite that problem in your life, and you'll never have to have conversations like this with a bunch of random strangers on a chat board after you read some books or watched a couple of videos, asking them to try to offer you some clarity and some help with the dumb shit that you've been doing with your life.